Hello everybody, this is Ben Manchevsky. The point of this video is about the Syrian civil war and my current views about the Syrian civil war. And I want to try to help people understand what exactly is going on over there, and also to give my opinion on the matter. Remember, this is only an opinion. What I will say at the end of the video is only an opinion. But I do believe it firmly, and I do believe that you should do the research yourself and come up with your own conclusions. Alright, the first part, what led to the Syrian revolution and this battle with the group known as the Islamic State, or also referred to as ISIL, or as the Arabs call it, Daash, or D-A-A-S-H-S-H, or D-A-E-S-H. Either one, it's the same group. They're an Islamic group, a jihadist Wahhabi group, primarily funded by Saudi Arabia, and they are a break-off group from Al-Qaeda, which has more members than Al-Qaeda has ever had in the history of its existence, and more funding than Al-Qaeda has ever had. Post 9/11, what led up to the Syrian Revolution was the Arab Spring. The Arab Spring began in December 2010 in Tunisia, and the government was overthrown within a month. So that just shows the effectiveness of these demonstrators, these quote-unquote pro-democracy demonstrators, and it sent a message to the international community that they could possibly overthrow regimes that they thought were inappropriate, illegitimate, or did not conform to the status quo that NATO, the West, and countries like Israel, Turkey, Saudi Arabia all admire to. The second Arab Spring Rising was in Algeria in December 2010, and it went on for a couple years. Not much to say about that. The big one, the first big one, was in Egypt, and we all heard about the uprisings in Egypt, and that was resolved within a month. It started in January 2011, and President Hosni Mubarak, who was quite popular among his people for a very long time, his police forces resorted to some brutal tactics against demonstrators, and he felt so bad against it that he stepped down from office. Immediately afterwards, the Muslim Brotherhood took control of Egypt. And if you don't know the Muslim Brotherhood is a self-declared pro-democracy group, but they're led by Sunni Islamicists who see anyone that is not a Sunni Muslim as a threat. They see Shias as threats. They see Christians as threats as well. And they have pretty much very low tolerance unless you succumb to their guidelines. So after a few years of Muslim Brotherhood rule, eventually the military kicked out the Muslim Brotherhood as the ruling party, so they're no longer in control of Egypt. Anyway, back to the point. Yemen, 2011. The government stepped down within a year. They had an Arab Spring uprising. Whether this was conducted truly naturally, truly by the people of Yemen, or whether it was influenced by the West, by NATO, by global elitists that saw that this country and its policies were not in their benefit, that's still yet to be determined. A really big one, and this is probably the second biggest of all, was Libya. February 2011, and there was a brutal war in Libya where Gaddafi, who was seen as a dictator and in many ways was a brutal dictator, he refused to step down from office, and the rebels and the pro-Gaddafi forces fought a battle for, what was it, for months, and he was eventually killed. But during this campaign, UN unanimously decided to participate in behalf of the rebels in Libya, and they conducted bombings, which helped these rebels, and we only found out afterwards, after Gaddafi had fallen, that these rebels, a lot of them were jihadists, and now in Libya, it is almost a jihadist haven, one might say. Blacks are being murdered for their race. I don't know how many Christians there are in Libya, but I'm sure if there are, they're under persecution. Any minority of any type that is not a Sunni Muslim is under scrutiny and persecution in Libya, and it was just not happening under Gaddafi. I'm not trying to defend Gaddafi. A lot of the things he did were really stupid and really terrible things to do, but you know, the resulting power struggle that happened between real Libyans and Al-Qaeda affiliated, whether they were Libyans or came from Saudi Arabia or wherever they came from, it's still ongoing. There's still no peace in Libya, and it was much more stable under Gaddafi, even if he was a brutal dictator, as people say. And next one was Lebanon, and Lebanon should have a special place in the hearts of every Christian in the world, because Lebanon is one of the few countries in the Middle East where a Christian has to be the president. It's in their law that a Christian has to be the president of Lebanon. And I personally, I think that, on one hand, it's awesome that they're given such a high office, and it is just a symbolic office as the prime minister and the Congress. I don't know if they call it the Congress or the Parliament. They do most of the decision making, but Lebanon has a huge percentage of Christians, and they are represented, and any threat to Lebanon and the Christian population by jihadists is a threat to Christians worldwide, and that's just the way I see it. And luckily, that was ended within a few months. Either Shia or Christian or government forces ended the rebellion, and all things are well. And the biggest one of all, which breaks my heart, is Syria. In March 2011, and it started, people began protesting en masse, and this is the one that's the most fishy of all. That smells of Western powers, this smells of NATO, this smells of Saudi Arabia, this smells of Israel intervening, planting these rebels, planting these jihadists, and within a couple weeks of these demonstrations, because it wasn't a rebellion, it was just demonstrations at first, all of a sudden accusations came up that President Bashar Al Assad had used sarin gas on his own people, and I have references to prove otherwise. And I have talked to many Syrians, and I've kind of made it my goal to go online on Facebook and meet Syrians just to hear their opinions about the conflict. And so many, like, I'm not gonna lie, 100% of every Syrian I've talked to, whether Shia, Christian, or Alawi, has completely supported Mr. Al Assad. I'm not saying that he is the greatest person in the world, but he is, in their eyes, a truly heroic leader. He has represented all groups of Syria, whether they be Alawite, Shia, Christian, and even Sunnis. And his father was in power before him, so he is the president. But it is like a symbolic position. It is a, in a way, it's a monarchy, where his father Bashar Al Assad was president before him, and Bashar Al Assad did participate in a few wars, one with Israel, one against Jordan, and also in the Iran-Iraq war on the side of Iran, which was, very, very radical for the time, because Syria and Iraq were both run by the Ba'ath Party, and maybe it was religious affiliations that made him decide to do it, but basically the entire world was behind Iraq, and Iran was a huge underdog in that fight. And I think history tells the story of what resulted in the Iran-Iraq war, and in behalf of the Iranians, they truly overcame unbelievable odds. But that's besides the point. Bashar Al Assad was seen as basically the successor to Nasser, I don't know how to pronounce his name, the Egyptian former president, who was basically the leader of the Arab nations, Egypt, Iraq, Syria, Lebanon, Jordan. He was basically like their de facto head. He was, he didn't rule the countries individually, but he spoke for them. He espoused pan-Arabic views, where Arabs should be united against the face of the enemy. And Bashar Al Assad was supposed to be the successor to that, and to a certain extent he was the successor to that. Why I like Bashar Al Assad, even though he's dead, God rest his soul, he tried to change the constitution so that a Christian could become president or hold a high office, hold any office. And the jihadists in the country and the Muslim Brotherhood party in the country were so outraged by what he said that they basically threatened civil war if he would not change his policy. And he did, unfortunately, back down and change his policy. But just the fact that he even wrote that and tried to draft that into their constitution is like so it's so amazing. It's so, I'm a Christian, if you couldn't tell by now. And that is just so revolutionary for that part of the world where Sunni Islam is completely dominant, and Shias are a small minority, and Christians are even a smaller minority. And and I think the Al-Assad family has really done an excellent job protecting their Christian population.